Hello, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk About It. I am Lara Wellman. I'm a business coach. I'm the founder of the Biz Studio. And I decided I wanted to have a show where I could just talk about all the things that I find really interesting to talk about, not just in the business world where I usually talk, but also just about things in life and in general that I think need more conversation. I think we all need to know a little bit about it. Every episode, I invite some guests to join me. I have three wonderful people who are here with me today, and we are going to be talking about hustle culture and working hard and what that means. So I'm going to introduce my guests. My first guest is Karen Wilson. Karen works with small businesses and startups who want to take a strategic approach to marketing their business. She believes we should all have life outside our businesses so we can enjoy our successes. Jas Bhandal. Jas has been teaching others how to slow down in order to level up in all aspects of life. Using yoga and meditation as tools, she encourages others to live their practice, to rediscover their joy, and to redefine the meaning of success for themselves. And Anjali Dilawri. Anjali is a chartered professional accountant with an over 30-year career in public and private practice and was named 2020 Businesswoman of the Year by the Women's Business Network. She is an independent consultant offering audit, accounting, tax, and business advisory services and has followed her passion for fashion and is the founder of You, Me, and the Dress, a dress shop and personal styling business. Welcome to all three of you. I'm super happy to have you here.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
We are going to talk about hustle culture and we're going to talk about working hard. And I am very loudly anti-hustle culture. And I think that we've been taught to think hard work is more valuable than it is, and that people always think that working harder, therefore, is the answer, and that I don't think that's true. So before I just start talking about what I think, I would love to just sort of open up the conversation. What is it about this particular topic that made you excited to come and have this conversation? And or like, what is it that your like little sort of feelings around it? Does anybody want to just jump in? Go for it.
Can I just jump in there? Because this is so totally right up my alley in terms of people that I work with, the reason why I do what I do, and just kind of how I got into what I do. A lot of what I see, a lot of what I feel, there's that cultural element to it as well. You know, you always got to work hard. You have to, you work hard, you get what you want. And if somehow something comes easily, a lot of the language that we have in society at this point really does focus on the hard work, because if it doesn't come, if it comes easily, then it might not have been worth it, right? And there's a lot of language, a lot of sayings, a lot of just mentality around that, because we've really glorified the grind. And what this has led to is people burning out, right? And so by the time people get to me, where they're like, okay, my doctor told me I should try yoga, or a friend of mine told me that she's tried some meditation and it worked for her. By the time they get to having that conversation with me, most people are already burnt out, right? And that burnout is caused because of, well, I have to work hard to get what I want. And trying to unlearn all of that is a huge, huge process. It's a huge undertaking, because we've been conditioned for, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years to think this is what I have to do to get what I want, or to get what I think I want.
Yes, and that's potentially another conversation.
Yeah.
And it's the reason that I want to have this conversation is if people don't even realize that that's what they're thinking, like, let alone unprogramming it. First, you need to know that it needs to be unprogrammed. And I'm hoping some of these conversations help with that.
Definitely.
Well, it's interesting that you said I have to work hard to get what I want, which is what we've all been taught. But what if what I want is not to work hard? Where do I fit? Where do I fit in the society? Because you can see the judgment just piling on the minute someone says, I don't want to work hard. slacker. Like we got all these words for people who don't want to work hard. But I mean, why? Find your why. Why are you working hard? So that you can not work hard, so you can relax, at leisure, enjoy, right? So it's interesting that we get this judgment when you say, oh, I did nothing, or I want to do nothing for a little while. And people are like it's
are you okay? Like,
are you
that's
okay?
usually
No.
what we get, right?
Are you okay? Exactly.
I feel like high-fiving all of you because I'm so loving this conversation and the energy already. But Jas, some of what you were saying about, why do you want to work hard? And I think, what is it you're working toward? What's the motivation behind it? And is it your own motivation, or is it what you feel like is expected of you?
Yes. Yeah. And it's really what's really interesting to me is a few years back, there was a question that one of my then coaches had asked in terms of, she was a business coach and she's actually not from Canada. And it was a whole other conversation that had happened around business and what you want your business to look like and, kind of the typical stuff. And then we had a secondary conversation about, okay, well, what motivates you, right? What do you want your life to look like, let alone your business? And, when we start putting in, time freedom, financial freedom, and, my perfect day looks like, for some people, it's, enjoying a cup of coffee on their deck in the morning. And I hate to say it, that's sad. That's sad in that, sorry, not, I should rephrase that. It's not sad in that that's a sad thing to aspire to. It's just sad that, like, that's what, like the epitome of freedom is, that's what it looks like. People don't have the time to do that, is what I'm saying, right? Like the fact that some people don't have the time to just enjoy a cup of coffee on their deck or on their front porch or in their backyard or at their kitchen table, whatever, right? Just those few moments of peace. And the fact that that's the minimum that they're aspiring to me it tells me that there's something wrong. There's something wrong with these expectations that we've piled onto ourselves. So getting back to the question that she had asked is, well, what motivates you? Is it power? Is it fame? Is it money? Like what actually motivates you to do the things that you do? And that'll tell us a lot about why we do what we do. Are you doing something because it brings you joy, it makes you feel good? Or are you doing something because it's going to generate an income? Are you doing something because you're motivated by more money? Like why are you doing what you're doing? And for most of us, it feels as though, again, just you start to strip away all the different layers that we've piled on to ourselves. A lot of it comes down to, if I have more money, therefore I must be more successful. Right. And in conversations that I've had, that's just generally not the case. Right. It comes back to, how do we define success? Are you happy? Are you content? Are you, when you look at your life now, do you constantly see things that need to be improved? Or are you able to take a breath and say, I've made it? So very, very interesting conversations, I think, that are going to be had today. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, this is the theme that keeps coming up already in all the conversations I've been having on this show around, have you stopped and asked yourself if you're actually doing what you want to be doing, or if you're just on somebody else's autopilot, right? What has society been teaching you? And the whole hustle harder part of this conversation is, it's like very much, especially in the business world, like, you'll sleep when you're dead. You don't need to sleep. Like, if you're really dedicated, you can sleep 3 hours a night and you're just going to go for it. And there's so much of that people feel like they have to try to measure up to it. And it's just like, again, what success you want for yourself. If you don't even know, you're just like, more, better, house, like, right. You're just on this, like, I think the next whatever. And you haven't actually checked in with yourself. Like, what if I don't want to even work full time? And as somebody who doesn't work full-time hours, it's still a little bit like, you're like, oh, people are going to judge me for saying I don't want to work full time.
Right.
I'd say that's a flex. Sorry.
And that's how I see it now, but it took a while.
Sorry, Anjali, I did not mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I was going to say, when I first started, and I just recently started my dress business, I had a multitude of advice coming. Okay, so you can do this, and you can rent premises, and you can grow this way and that. And it's like, wait a minute, I don't want to do all that. I don't want to do any of that. I want it to be small. And it was just, it throws people off. What do you mean? And then they don't even know how to respond. What do you mean you want to stay small? Don't we all want to get bigger and better and work harder? And it's like, no, I want it to be a little dress shop. I call it a little dress shop, and that's how I want it to stay. And it's language we haven't heard, so it throws people off. But the more we talk about things like that, like slowing down, the more we normalize it, the more other people will start thinking, oh, okay, I want that too. Because when you say, are you happy? I think a lot of us don't know. We don't know if we're happy. We've never checked in, as Lara just said. So we go, okay, I don't know, but let's look at everyone around me. Oh, they're saying, work harder, do blah, blah, blah. Their hustle culture will get you everything you want. Since I don't know, I'll just follow the model that's all around me. And so I think to check in is scary, because when you're very busy, you don't need to check in. You don't actually have to face anything. Am I happy? You don't have to, you just keep moving. You're on the hamster wheel, and all you got to do is just keep moving. But you never really are going to know yourself or become present, or it sounds cheesy, but find yourself, find your reason, for joy, or find that. Because somehow we're convinced that you just keep, what is it, Dory? Just keep swimming. Right? Just keep swimming, right?
Yeah.
But where are we swimming to? Where are we going? What are we doing? Just keep swimming.
Yeah.
Literally.
Well, and I find that that's a really common thing with entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning of a business, is you're hearing all this information coming from every direction. Everybody's got an opinion about what you should do. And maybe they're influenced by the hustle culture, and maybe they're influenced by their own expertise. But there's this idea that everybody has to do things a certain way and be focused on growth. But growth isn't just about dollars and cents. It's also about, what I am evolving my life to be. It's about what I am wanting to do to impact the world. It's I find the whole idea of growth being the yardstick we measure everything by is extremely frustrating, because business has an ebb and flow. You're going to have down quarters, you're going to have down years. It is not one of those things that it's called a roller coaster for a reason. Like, the data looks like that. You know this, Anjali, really well.
Yeah.
And so when you look at public companies and constantly trying to, bring in better results quarter over quarter, year over year, it's like, the profit margins don't have to constantly be expanding, because when that's happening, if you're constantly bringing in better results, there's a crash coming. There's something that's there's a wall. There's limits to how far we can grow in that sense. So that can't be the one and only yardstick we use.
Absolutely.
But that speaks to the hard work piece, right? So if we get into the hard work, is the only way to make more money, find more success, is it always to work harder? And my thing is no, it's not, right? Like, we take away from the idea that the only way to do better is to work harder so that it hurts more and that we're more tired.
No pain, no gain.
Well, there you go. There's another one, right? No,
That's a toxic concept.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like, all of the
if you're not growing, you're dying. That's another one that's come up in business a lot.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to be hard all the time to work. In fact, sometimes when we rest more, when we take time for ourselves, we are then better at our job when we are going to do it, right? When I am tired, stressed out at the end of my rope, am I doing the best work that I can do then? No, I'm not. When I am not tired and I take time for myself, I'm more creative. I come with ways that I can be more efficient. Even just the whole, how do I be more productive? How do I be more productive? And you may have heard people talk about productive versus effective, right? It's not about producing more. It's about how do I figure out how to do, like, if I can do my job in less time, that's a win. And then I don't need to fill that time with more work. I just get to have time.
Yeah. I think what we're talking about just in terms of like, the work hard, the hustle culture, if we look at we're looking specifically at entrepreneurs in this case. Is that correct? Or are we looking
Not
at sort of
necessarily. I
employee?
think we all are, so it kind of
Okay.
comes up. But let's
So
talk everybody. Really, I
well,
think we should talk everybody.
well, here's something kind of on the flip side of that, because I am still an employee, or had been an employee, sorry, for many, many years, working for the municipal government. And, that's a whole other beast in and of itself. Like, I'm sure you ladies at some point in your working career have had retail experience where you're working a set number of hours, right? And so what's the expectation there, right? It's not about efficiency necessarily. It's about, I need a body here for this amount of time, right? So we're programmed, it feels anyways, that we're programmed that, between certain hours, we need to be on it. We have this much work that we need to do spread out over this much time. Efficiency kind of goes out the window, right? Because if I do my job too well, then I'm rewarded with more work, right? And who wants to do more work? Versus entrepreneurs, right? Where it's, okay, I have this much work to do. How can I get this done in the least amount of time with the best possible result? That's the win. Like, there's a huge shift in mentality that happens, right? So for people who are going from that employee mindset to the entrepreneurial mindset, I think that, because we're starting to see a lot of that, especially coming out of the last couple of years, is a lot of people are saying, screw it, I want to work for myself. Like, there is no stability in anything else, really.
Mhm.
So why not take a chance on myself? And shifting that mentality is really, really hard when all we've been taught, when we're told to go out and get a job, is this is what you need to do. You need to put in these hours, right? So for a lot of people, they don't actually understand what it means, or it's a really difficult concept to grasp sometimes when we say, work a little more efficiently, work smarter, not harder. Well, what does that look like? Right? So yes, I might get these tasks done in a shorter amount of time, but then what do I do with the rest of my time? What does that look like? Right? And
that's sort of, we feel that, well, we're conditioned to then go, so as you move from employee to self-employed, and you do work better, let's say you do get all the things you need to get done in less time, because you've come from that old environment, you're like, oh, well, I have to do something now. Like, that's the hustle culture trance. Now what do? I have to do something else. I have more time. And that's the trance, right? Like, that you're in. That's what we've been conditioned. It's like, hey, here's an idea. How about you don't work for a little while?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not something and the other part of it is, we don't know how to have leisure. We don't know how to not do anything. I think we've, like certain things that evolution, you lose certain skills. Like, if your left earlobe is not used much, and it gets, we don't know how to do nothing. We don't know how to have leisure. Like,
we don't know how to be bored.
We don't know how to be bored. I mean, because the second you're bored, you pick up your phone and now you're scrolling, and we don't know how to just have downtime. And it's so important for our mental health. When I was young and we go on road trips, I had to just look out the window and stare into the sky. And that was important. As boring as it seemed at the time, it was important to be able to do nothing. And I think we're losing the ability to do nothing.
I agree. Like, I intentionally now, like, I have, anytime I have a doctor's appointment or a chiro appointment, or even like, a petty or whatever scheduled, if I'm waiting, my phone doesn't go in with me. And like, I force myself to just like not have anything in my hands unless I'm reading a book, or like in most cases now it's just, okay, look around, actually take in the environment that you're in, strike up a conversation if it calls for it. But I noticed that as well, like just the inability to be bored for any amount of time, because we're conditioned to think that being bored is a waste of time. That's time that could be better spent being productive. And why? Right? Like
And so,
productive for what? Sorry, go ahead.
right. And don't forget that maybe you are being productive, right? Thinking is productive. So when you hear
Absolutely.
people say, like, I don't know why all my best ideas come to me in the shower. I'm like, well, I do. It's because you stopped and you're not watching anything, you're not doing
Yeah.
anything. And so then things pop up into your mind. Same when you're driving, or when I'm driving, then I can't write them down, but it's because your brain has a chance to do that.
Yeah.
And just one point to the corporate versus entrepreneurial, I think my dream is that people who work in more traditional settings start to realize that working harder isn't the answer also, right? There are workplaces that have gone down to 4-day weeks, and they're just like their production is the same because they're
Yeah.
just happier when they're there. They, find ways to be more efficient. They're less tired, they're less stressed. Like, it doesn't have to mean that things are going to crumble. But if you believe that how many hours you're there is a measure of how well you're going to do, and a measure of dedication, then that's all you're looking at.
Yeah, and it's very one-dimensional in that way. It's not taking into account the lives that people lead outside of work.
Yeah. There was research quite a long time ago. I can't cite it easily, but there was this prediction that this researcher did decades and decades ago that, by this time we would be, living a life of leisure, and, we would have this, if anyone's interested in it, it's talked about in Rutger Bregman's book, Utopia for Realists. And it's this idea that we're going to be able to have a society of leisure was based on all of these advances in automation and whatnot. But we live in this capitalist economy that relies on a workforce to do labor. And, from the smallest child in elementary school to every adult, we are programmed to do this. And as soon as we start pushing back on that idea, and I think entrepreneurs have we have the freedom and the flexibility to push back on it and say, I don't want to grow. I don't need, if I want to make $100,000 a year and I'm satisfied with that, I can say, okay, that's all I need. That's all I need to live a very comfortable life for myself. But there's a lot of messaging out there toward entrepreneurs about how that is not enough, that you should want more. And that, that idea, not necessarily about growing, being always an important step in a business, but just being able to make more money to help others. And I think that shows how much we've failed as a society to be to provide the support that people need and give everybody a chance.
I'm going to chime in there and say, first of all, yes, I do agree with you. Absolutely. In a slightly different stream, and bringing in that element of self-awareness, like, we talked about right at the beginning, why do we do what we do? What do we define as success? If we look at some research on addiction, for example, right? This is I know it can be a touchy topic for some, but just generally speaking here, I feel that we as society have become addicted to this hard work, right? And
Mm.
when I
Yep.
say that, what I'm saying is, as you had mentioned, it's, you know, bigger, better, more, right? So we're seeking things that bring us more pleasure, right? Pleasure as in, you know, if or when I get that bigger house or the better car or whatever, I'm going to be happy.
Oh, she's frozen.
Oh
All
no,
right.
I was enjoying where that was going too.
Yeah, me too.
know.
To be continued.
Yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, so I think we can just keep going and hopefully she'll be back.
Oh no.
Um,
Yes.
but just on the same topic around how we feel about all the things, right? What do we want and how do we know what it is and what is utopia? I kind of like that whole
yeah.
idea because I think we don't really know what we want. And it's like the self-care thing, right? Everybody's like, but are you doing self-care? And now they're starting to say like, you know, self-care isn't just taking a bath, but it's when you're so tired, you don't even enjoy your downtime. When you're so tired, you can't even figure out what you like. I think that's the sign, right? Like I really think, you know, Anjali, you said before this whole like people don't know how to relax. I think they don't know what they like. They don't know what they want. It's
Yeah.
all of those things.
And you're not going to find out. This is the catch. You're not going to find out until you slow down, right? You're going so fast, and you're like, where am I going? What do I want in life? But you can't figure that out while you're moving that fast. You have to slow down. You have to pay attention. You have to become aware of the little things, the details, how something makes you feel means slowing down and being attuned to, oh, and sometimes, you know, you're kind of figuring it out. You're figuring yourself out, right?
Mm.
That's the biggest journey that we each take is figuring ourselves out. Hi, Jess.
You're back.
And to do that, though, you need to slow down.
Sorry, I'm having a little difficulty here. Okay.
That's okay.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. So sorry about that. What I was saying with regards to pleasure and looking forward to, you know, the next thing, the thing that's going to bring us the most pleasure. Pleasure is a dopamine hit, right? And dopamine only wants more dopamine. And so if we're constantly chasing the next big thing, then what does that mean in terms of happiness, right? Because we know that pleasure does not equal happiness, right? So happiness is something that's completely different. Happiness, I would say, is a little bit more on the side of being content with what we have, being okay with where we are, being okay with who we are, right? And being okay with whatever successes we've had along the way, and not necessarily, it's not saying don't reach for more. It's saying take a breath where you are and appreciate what you have. And then from there, see if more is what you want and why you want it, right? Because more does not necessarily equal better. And, you know, programming for sure, as we've already mentioned, but at the same time, if we are seeking that pleasure, that hit of dopamine every single time we're working hard, whether that's the extra money and overtime for, you know, staff, whether that is an extra client that we've chosen to take on as, you know, someone who is self-employed, when we just don't have the capacity for it, what does that really mean for our quality of life? And what does that really mean for our definition of success?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the things that I love about, you know, working for myself is recently I took on a new client and I'm doing work for them that I'll do for other people. And I was able to say to them that I will do this for you because I really like you and I want to work with you. And it's the success of this work is about me doing something I enjoy and not necessarily about growing my business. And to me, that feels like something that is enormously gratifying in contrast to being a corporate employee, where I'm just always in service to somebody else's wins, really, because it's not even necessarily a long-term strategy that they're going by. It's, we're doing things just because somebody is like, oh, that seems like a good idea.
Nope, we lost her again.
No.
It's an adventure. I was going to bring up the idea of the harder and the hustle in relation to even just how young you're supposed to do everything. I actually saw somebody post on Facebook today about, it's graduation season. So a lot of people are, like, my kid did this and they, now they're going here and they did this amazing thing. And the post was basically like, shout out to the kids who maybe are just kind of hanging on and they haven't figured it out yet, but they will. And that's okay too. Like, we're not like, it's the whole, top 40 under 40. And I've had this conversation with, at least I know Karen for sure. Some of you may have heard me say this also, but the top 40 under 40, like, why is it so impressive that you did this so quickly and so young? Like, what about those people who went and changed their entire career and like did something new and really awesome at like 50? Like, it's not always about how fast you did it, how early you did it, how you did it without any help. Like, it's always that kind of, like, do it harder, better, faster. I don't like it.
Yeah. And again, we've got these arbitrary life stages that society has kind of decided this is what you're supposed to do and when and how, and why do we have to fit into this weird box that doesn't feel right? It's like putting on a dress that is not made for you. And why would you want to do that when you have this variety of options out there that are so much better?
Yeah.
That's a really good example, Anjali. Now I'm thinking about all the dresses I've seen at your house and how different they are, right? And how one style appeals to somebody and like how they're going to feel in it. One person's going to put on a dress and they're going to feel like amazing, and somebody else is going to be like, I feel really weird. But we have said, like, this is the dress you should want. Everybody wear this one. It's as an
so
analogy.
this is my first question is when someone puts on a dress, because they're like, how do I look? And I'm like, how do you feel? Right? Because we're so conditioned to look outward for validation, for worth, for tell me how I look. Do I look fat? Do I look skinny? Do I look tall? Do I look this? Does my hip? And I'm like, how do you feel? It doesn't matter what I think about. I mean, obviously I'm going to give you, advice and tips, but the first question is always, how do you feel? And if you feel great, we're done. We're done. You just made my job really easy. But we're not attuned to how we feel. We're not asked that in our lives, like as an employees, we're not asked, how do you feel, right? So we don't know, and so most of us are trying to fit in somewhere, and we've been conditioned to do that too. This is how you live your life. You go to school, okay, that's one way, but then you get married, then you have whatever. So we've got this linear sort of, and then well, then you go to university, and it's like, well, why? It is made up. We made that up. We were not born to do that. We were born to do anything, and we made it up. We made one line, and when you veer off, it's the talk, the chatter, it's like there's a poem where Mary Oliver's the judgment, everyone's clawing at you. You veered off. Did you hear about so and so veered off the path? It's like we're almost like drones, and then if someone veers off, you're like, oh no. It's like, no, how about applauding the person that jumped off and said, screw this, pardon my language, but there's much more out there than this box or this path or this. So I mean, and hustle culture is just one part of that conditioning of what we're supposed to be like, how we're supposed to live, what we're supposed, that the should, right? Stop. They say stop shitting on yourself, like, you know.
Yes.
And it's hard to break free. It is a constant. It's an uphill battle. You're swimming against the tide when you try to go against hustle culture. You know, you try to go against all the stuff you've been conditioned to do. But once you jump off, you do find, as we're talking, there are like-minded people. There are communities of people that are off and having the time of their lives, you know, and it's like, oh, hello, my people, you know, and it's like, but it's hard to get off because I mean, it's a strong
It makes me
pull.
think of midlife crises, right? Like what you like. I remember, right, in days gone by, you'd be like, "Oh, they're having a midlife crisis. They're buying expensive car. They're trying to find thrill." Blah, blah, blah. And now I feel like what it really is it's you hit a certain age and you've had enough. And in some ways, people were doing it by like going and buy, like they're trying to find their youth or whatever. But now what I feel like I'm seeing is more people getting to the place where they're like, I don't want to do things that way. I'm going to do something differently.
Right.
And it's going to sound like to everybody else, you're having a midlife crisis. Like, what is she doing? Quitting her job. It's a good job. It's a good job. Like, what are you going to do now? Right. Like, this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Versus coming at it from like, I am just like prioritizing things differently. I am making different decisions. It's not a crisis. It's just, that's it. And I think that it's important to recognize that changing some of this stuff, the deprogramming, all of that, it's uncomfortable, right? You're going to do things that you don't think you're supposed to do. You're going to think things and you're going to think, my parents are going to think this is a bad decision. My siblings are going to think this is a bad decision. My neighbor, like everybody's going to think I'm making a mistake.
You know, when you say, what do you, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead,
when
Anjali.
it was really quick. I was gonna say, what are you gonna do? Because I get that asked a lot now. And my favorite answer, and it's the truth, I don't know. And it's just blank stares and, oh my gosh, let me help you. No, let me not. No, I want to not know. I want to kind of go venture out into the unknown. I want to get off that path, that beaten path. Sorry, go ahead, Jas.
That's another juicy one though, right? The idea that not knowing is the problem that must be solved immediately. Like, what if it's not a problem?
What if it's not a problem?
What?
Totally agree.
Oh, I think Jas is frozen again. Yeah.
Oh, there you go, Jas.
So I was actually that person, right? So I was, like I said, I was working for the municipal government. I was offered a full-time position and I accepted just because, that's a natural progression of things. I've been working as a casual, made it to part-time and, offered a full-time position, benefits, pension, blah, 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 golden handcuffs. Like it's the thing that you're supposed to do, right? Like you're set. And so I had accepted it. It was the worst year and a half of my life. Like year and a half. That was pushing it, right? And when I requested to transfer back to my old part-time position, the pushback was real, and not just from like my parents a little bit. It meant a little bit more. My siblings, they were supportive because they understood, but at the same time, they're like, "Yo, like, are you sure?" And just other staff, like other employees.
We keep losing her.
Yeah. But I mean, what Jas is saying, there is an entire system set against you jumping off, right? That is vested in you staying on and believing the story and believing all the things that we've been conditioned to believe, which are all untrue. Like so much of it is untrue for many. For some, it works. But
why would you take a pay cut? Why would you quit a job before you have another job? Why would you do all of these things that are contrary to our societal ideas of success?
Right. Exactly. I think that's a big part of it, is just becoming aware of how many things you have been taught, which aren't really what you feel or believe, but just becoming aware that these are just ideas that were ingrained in us very early by a patriarchal society. And they're not necessarily our ideas, that we're very much a product of our environment, and you know, to question it and go, what do I want? And it's not an easy answer.
Yeah. And as much as I, I see the potential for harm in how connected we are and online all the time, I think that conversations like this are what give me hope, because people are starting to realize, oh, wait, this was all made up by somebody and I don't have to accept it.
Yeah.
And I can push back on it and advocate for change and structure my life in a different way than the status quo dictates to me. I love that. And I see more and more people kind of coming to that realization that the status quo doesn't actually have to be the status quo.
Yeah.
Jas, are you back?
It's just false.
She just keeps coming back and freezing again. I really think most of the rules are not true, right? They're just mostly not. And it's hard to see that, right? Like, it's like, until you start seeing it, you don't believe it. And then you start seeing it, right? When you're ready, you can start seeing all these things. You're like, whoa, I can't believe how untrue so many of these things are.
Yeah.
But until you start seeing it, it all just feels true.
Yeah.
Well, and the harder part is to realize that it's actually designed that way. It's actually designed to keep us all in that system, because it is benefiting a small group of people. And so they are very powerful, very strong, and they are vested in keeping us all in this system. It brings a downer on our conversation, but but when you know it, the only change you can make is yourself, right? So you make that change, and then by just that simple change, you talk to two friends and they talk to two friends. That old commercial from when I was going, right? And next thing you know, like, people are going, oh, like, let's just start with ourselves. Let's start with our own conversation, like you're doing, Lara, and go from there. Because it can be a little overwhelming to think, if the system is rigged against us, we have no chance. Like, just start with yourself.
And because I get to that point a lot, right? Like, but what do we do? Like, I don't know how we fix it.
It's hopeless.
But I am hoping that these conversations are the starting place, so that we can start just thinking about things differently. Or maybe people hearing this are like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Or, do I need to reevaluate how I feel about hard work? Do I need to reevaluate the fact that I'm so proud of myself for working evenings and weekends, even though I'm paid really to work 9 to 5? Why do I always bring my work home? If they're asking more of me than I can do in my work hours at work, should I say to them, you're giving me too much work? And it's scary, because then you think, well, then they'll fire me and they'll hire somebody who will do all that work.
We take it too personally, right? We take, like, it really does come back to what you guys have said. It's the reevaluation. Why am I doing what I'm doing?
We just keep losing her through every.
Every time I just want to hear what she's going to say.
I know. It's like we get 1 minute. And then I get distracted. I'm like, what were we saying? But I think reevaluating everything is scary. And so a lot of people don't do it for that reason.
Most people don't. It's change is scary, reevaluating. The part of it is, well, everything we've learned, it also, when you stick close to it, it's comforting. It's safe, right? So and so why would I make myself unsafe and uncomfortable? You don't know what's on the other end of that, which is a lot of peace and joy, by not the definitions of the society you're in, but you have to go through the rubble. You have to go through the in between that really rough resistance, that really rough period, but you'll come out the other end. And it's I don't know, visually, it's like a, it's like a coming out of a dark cave, and you go, oh, but you got to go through the cave first. You got to question and challenge and struggle with it and go, what am I doing? Am I crazy? And all that. But when you come out, you're like, oh, hello. To yourself, hello.
And I think a lot of people may be interested in starting to take that journey, but they also see kind of how people react to some who are in it. And because those people are learning and pushing it back on the status quo, they get some heat for that. And that's definitely an uncomfortable position to be in. But so I can understand why some people are hesitant to be out there saying, that the status quo is, whatever they feel about it. Because if you're pushing against it, it can be hard to get support.
Yeah. And that's okay. I mean, you do the whole expression, you do you, right? You do what you can do with what you have. Absolutely. And as long as you're okay with that, as long as you're kind of at peace with that.
Yeah, I think also because there's a piece of privilege to it too, right? So if you are working in a retail job, if they are really working dollars for hours and there's not much choice to it, if there are a lot of different things that can play into why working more might be necessary, right? So I don't want to not acknowledge that. But there's also that it has to be hard mindset that I see it a lot with my clients, and I see it a lot in, the people that I know, is that when something happens, the hard way is the way you think of first. Like, it's going to be difficult and I'm going to have to do all of these things. And you're like, what if you just look for the really simple way? What if you look for the path of least resistance? What if it's not going to be difficult? What if it's not going to be difficult? What if that?
And the simple way can be radically different from person to person too.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
What you think is simple isn't necessarily what I think is simple or works well for me.
Yes. There is no one way to do a thing. That is my my song. And how we think about things and how we operate. And, there's just, some people would hate to pick up the phone and call somebody. And some people would be like, I can just pick up the phone and call somebody. Right? Like it's vastly different, but what is the easy way? What is the way? And I mean, this ties into perfection too, right? So it's hard because it has to be perfect, and I have to this, and I have to that, and I have to this, I have to that. It's got to be perfect, otherwise it never is going to work out. But what if that's not true either? What if it's not true? Yeah. So many things just aren't true.
There's a lot of that, like, if you're suffering and sacrificing, then you're working hard enough, right? So if you're happy and you're working, there's something wrong with that. I find that a lot in businesses, right? Like if you have that happy employee that's got the balance and that's like happily doing work, we can push them more. They're not at their, there's this culture like, they're not working hard enough, because if you're working hard enough, you'd be complaining about how hard you're working, right? Like, I pulled an 18-hour shift and everyone's going, woo. And then the other person who decided to go home that day to see their family or whatever, you use the barometer of that person who works the hardest, who is at the brink, and somehow that's valued. Like, that's, wow, look at so-and-so, right? And even that is so messed up, right? You worked so hard that you neglected your family, your health, yourself, whatever it is. You're a hard worker. But why is that? And therefore, the worth is attached to that. Therefore, we value you more. And unfortunately, therefore, you will get those promotions or that pay, that bonus, but because you pushed at the expense of everything in your life. why is that what you want to reward? Why wouldn't we want to reward someone that had work-life balance? I always say, hey, here's your bonus because you balance your life well, and you're like, it's such a, I'm laughing because it's, imagine, right? We try to say that. Like, it would be laughable. That's the society we're in, right? That we don't give bonuses for balance or for hey, you look like you're enjoying what you do. Thank you for coming in happy to work.
So
Isn't that a radical idea?
Agreed. But I also want to put shine a light a little bit on kind of the gender disparity here too, right? And just for the purpose of this particular example, let's just say men and women are treated very, very differently when it comes to who we put on a pedestal, right? Typically, generally, I find with women, it's you have to be superwoman in order to get everything done. If you've got dependents, you've got, a job, you've got like the household to run, you got literally everything to do, and you're expected to go above and beyond. And that is what's kind of, said as a holy moly, I can't believe she's doing all of that. She must be so amazing. And look at her, the hard work is, it's like what people aspire to, right? Whereas with men, typically, I find it's the opposite, right? People want to be friends with the guy who's out partying. People want to be friends with the guy who's able to cut loose. People reward the guy who looks like he's having a good time. Why is it so different? That's the other piece important. That really just, it grinds my gears a lot. A lot, because I see it so often. So that's the other thing.
The Peter principle and the Paula principle?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell us, Karen.
The Peter principle is basically this idea that males don't reach their level of incompetence in their careers, and women almost never reach their level of incompetence. And it's the idea that, when you have someone in a leadership position and there's a male in these leadership positions, they haven't had to prove themselves in the way a woman has. And of course, when you get into the intersectional aspects of it, a Black woman or a brown woman versus a white woman has to prove herself, umpteen times more than someone who's white. And so it's this really insidious way that we hold women and women of color back from advancing. And the thing is that it's been shown that companies that are more diverse in their leadership do better.
Absolutely. But again, even in terms of even having these conversations, I think, number one, it is really important that we do have them. But it comes back, for me anyways, the question that I end up asking myself is this my burden to bear? Because when it comes right down to it, we're talking about burnout, right? We're talking about wanting more, having more, being more all the time, because that is what's expected of us. Is that what we expect of ourselves? Right. And I'm not saying do the bare minimum. I mean, do that if that's what you want to do, if that makes you happy. But in terms of the last couple of years have really highlighted a few key important things for me. Number one, we're not designed to have this much information bombarded at us all the time. Our body is just not designed for it. Our mind is still catching up to everything that we see in a day. The fact that we are receiving, news, or we're receiving, all sorts of information about everything that is happening outside of our sort of immediate circle can be a really great thing, because we get to see what's possible, what's probable. But when we see that much negative stuff, when we see that much where it just feels like it's so insurmountable, what do we do? Is that really something that we need to take on? And if we feel it is something that we need to take on, as Anjali had mentioned right at the beginning, start with yourself, right? What can I do to make my life a more joyful place for me, so that I can then in turn make it a joyful experience to be around me, and spread it in that way, right? There's more obviously to it, the further along that we go, but if the task feels insurmountable, that's the best place to start, right? When we start to look at how hard it is to change the minds of ourselves, we realize it's next to impossible to change anyone else's mind, right? It starts with us.
Yeah.
So
well, joy is contagious. Yeah.
Yes,
Joy is
and
contagious.
If we don't
Start with yourself.
yeah, and if we've decided for ourselves that we don't really care about having a hugely scalable business, that's fine, right? Start there. Like that's okay. and starting there is probably the first step in having conversations and just doing that, as opposed to making a big to-do about that and putting ourselves on the pedestal for that, right? Because what tends to happen, we bring some attention to it, which is fantastic. We do need to have these conversations. But when one person becomes this beacon of, okay, I've done it, so therefore you can too, I also think that's where a lot of problems start, right? Because we then start to compare ourselves to that person that we've now put on a pedestal, or that business that we've now put on a pedestal, which is unfair. It's unfair to us. So what I'm trying to say is, basically it comes down to live your life. Live your life, and live your life joyfully, whatever that looks like to you.
It's funny because as you say that, I sort of get inspired by the whole KonMari movement, and like not just with things, but with what I'm doing. Get rid of the things that don't bring you joy, and find the things, lean into the things that do, so that you can live that joyful life, making the choices that matter most to you.
Agreed.
Yeah. We are almost at 3:00 already, because that went really fast. And I mean, I know we could talk another hour easily, and I have all kinds of other ideas for even other episodes around, selflessness. And, I was thinking about how there's the whole area of working hard that we didn't cover, which is like being a hard ass, right? And how you can't be nice if you're up at the top, right? Can't be nice, gotta be tough. It's like being a hard person. There's so many things. There's so many things, but I appreciate you all being here so much. Do any of you, or do all of you, have final thoughts as we kind of wrap up this episode? Something to leave people with? It can be maybe even something they can do other than just being aware. But what do you think? Who would like to share a final thought?
I would just say I would encourage everyone, which is something I try to do myself, is to have some moments of stillness every day for yourself. Whether it depends, every lifestyle is different. That might mean 2 minutes, it might mean 2 hours, but some moments of stillness.
Love it.
I'll jump in there and say what I just said. Live your life. Live your life as joyfully as you can. The rest will come.
Awesome.
Yeah. I will say, make your own rule book. Don't live by anybody else's.
Yeah. And I think, mine will be the look for the easy way. Next time something feels really hard, ask yourself if there's something else you could do that would be easy. What if you just do that thing now that you think you have to wait a year or two for to be more ready for? What if you send a quick text instead of writing a formal email? What if you whatever it is? There's a million examples, but what if it's just the easy way? And stop thinking that the only way to do it right is to do it perfectly and for it to hurt.
For sure.
Yeah.
I
Thank
appreciate
you so
you
much.
all being with me here so
Thank
much.
you.
the next episode of Let's Talk About It will be in 2 weeks from now. If anybody watching or listening, I would love it if you shared this with people so more people can hear this rich conversation. If anybody else has ideas for topics or who wants to be on with me, please send me a message or leave a comment on on wherever you're watching this. And I just want to keep having these conversations because I think they're important.
Thank you so much, Lara,
Thank you.
for having us on.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone.